we were talking to a DEI expert yesterday, and we kind of framed up this question. We were like, imagine it's 10 years from now, it's 2032 or 2034, whatever, and there's a headline on diversity in the New York Times or whatever publication. What would you like it to say? And her response was, I mean, I don't even think in terms of 10 years. I don't expect to see real change until 2050. And there was a part of me that related to that because we're in a similar boat where it's like there's nothing about building Black wealth outside of like a big public policy change that's going to be very quick. There's not a ton of quick wins. There's a lot of digging out and generational and time needed. And it made me think of you and your work with The Plug. And so I wanted to ask, in your world, how do you stay motivated to continue to work on this long game, things where the rewards aren't, sometimes they're quick, but then they're reversed. sometimes it's just a little volatile. And what's next for The Plug, given, the trajectory of how long we're looking?
Yeah, my goodness, there's so much there, right? I think about we have a lot of key dates, right? It's supposed to be that by 2040, minorities are no longer minorities. So there's kind of that end. I look a lot too. I think there was a big stat that was going around for a while on Black net worth by 2050 is supposed to reach zero. A lot of our wealth wiped out during the 2008 recession, and then kind of the further challenge of pandemic, and then we're looking at layoffs now. So very scary times for sure, right? And I think that we can't ignore that. But I do think that amid the tragedy and amid the challenges really provides a new set of opportunities and circumstances that allow us to be strategic. And that's also why I wrote Up Her Hand, and I also wanted to share the reporting and research of what's happening across Black innovation, because if you're paying attention, there are some unique inflection points that are also happening that can help us to educate each other on not just wealth building, but career and purpose building at the same time. Because I think that in addition to preaching resource allocation and resource accumulation is important, I think there are also some other things that are shifting within our communities and our societies as it relates to emotional intelligence, strategy, as well as critical thinking. At least I hope that that's kind of what this exposure across social media is helping us to do as well, because we also have to think about the mental health implications of poverty and the challenges that exist, and even with wealth, right? As we've kind of seen and witnessed in the last few weeks. So for me, with The Plug and in our documentation of trends and innovation and looking across even Black-led startups who were able to raise Series A and Series B rounds of funding within the venture capital space, which is very rare, unfortunately rare. Being able to map these things and also take a look at, for the first time, probably in the history of this country, we are seeing more Black asset managers managing funds of $100 million plus, literally for the first time in human history, or our history, and probably human history, considering how long we've been Black on this planet. But I think that those sort of signals to me are the things that I try to pay attention to, right? Because yes, wide sweeping policy change has to happen, the student loan crisis, all of these kinds of things. We do a lot of reporting on HBCUs and innovation. I also look towards that as well. Whereas, listen, I think there was a lot of fodder around celebrities being the saviors of HBCUs, when the reality is they have been historically underfunded for centuries. And the reality is that yes, policy change needs to happen, but there also has to be corporate investment. And we're seeing that with Apple and the Propel Center, which will be housed in Atlanta and be an environment for Black software engineers and developers to train under Apple and get more access to jobs and opportunities. So I think that leveling the playing field is really at the hands of these corporate companies who in 2020 made significant pledges towards helping Black communities onboard into tech jobs and tech roles. I would hope too, we're strategically thinking about how we also onboard into some of these credentialing programs. I know that between Amazon and Google and Verizon and all these places, that yes, they may face some layoffs, but that just means they're ready for the next round of things that they're developing. And so being in those rooms and learning under those particular companies, and again, if you're paying attention and you're setting up a strategy and you're looking at the opportunities, again, tech literacy, not just being what you're learning in terms of how to program or what have you, but the actual breadth of opportunities that exist that you can do from home on your schedule in order to credential yourself for what's coming in the new economy, because 2023 is going to look very different, right?
Oh, yeah.
2024, 2025, once we get to 2050, for me, I don't actually care about the race conversation. What I actually care about is, did we do enough strategically to make sure that people understood what their options were?
I know it's a big issue, right? The digital divide, tech illiteracy. It's something that I've been mindful of for about 20 years now. Do you have, or is there a set of proposals that you think are probably best at trying to address these issues? Because I've read far more articles talking about the pervasiveness of the issue, but not nearly as many like solutions or proposed solutions. So like, do you have one, or is the one that you are mindful of that you think is best suited to kind of solve for the issues that we've been talking about?
Well, at Capway personally, and of course using Capway is my vessel to do this. Do we have answers? Yes. The problem is that when it comes, it's two problems, if I'm just being honest here. One is, anytime you're doing anything in finance and technology, it takes funding to do that. Mm-hmm. And the problem is, people who have the ideas, people who've experienced these things, they are least likely to get the funding. So that's number one. So that's an issue. The second issue that comes along with having the answer, having the solution, is that, even still kind of speaking to funding, it's a sexy idea. It's a sexy thought, or to speak of it sounds sexy to solve it, but to actually solve it is at the top of no one's list when you're talking about the reality of what's going on. It's public, so it's not like a secret. If you look up grants that have been given to AT&T, Verizon, billions of dollars have been given to them to figure out the digital divide issue. AT is in Dallas. They've been given millions, billions of government contracts to lay fiber, figure out this digital divide issue. And this was before the pandemic. And we see that it's still there. So are solutions there? Do I have solutions? There are things we want to work on? Yes. But these are also, unfortunately, these are not $1 million fixes. These are $100 million fixes. These are infrastructure fixes. These are structural fixes. These are government fixes. And when you don't have those things willingly to work together behind closed doors, not what looks good in social media, or like for a politician to get elected, until it makes sense for everybody behind closed doors, there's never going to be a solution. And I don't like being like the person like bearer of bad news, but like, no, that's reality. We're never going to get to the solution until everybody behind closed doors is on the same page. And I don't see that happening anytime soon.
One quick thing from a book standpoint, I loved Black Buck, and I'm not sure if you all have read it. The author, Mateo, his last name is blanking on me. It is an incredible book. I picked it up at the airport, and it is the story of this young man. He works at Starbucks, completely unrealized and tapped potential, ends up joining this tech startup from a sales perspective. It's a crazy environment, right? It kind of reminds me like my early days working for other startups, but the Black experience version. And like this thing has to become a movie. Anyway, he like stealthily creates this entire network of underserved, underrepresented, misfits where he essentially trains all of them to get these like lucrative sales jobs at these tech companies. And all of these like companies start to catch on that like there's too many Black and brown people in these companies. Like, how is this happening? But it was so brilliant because it was like, if we work in stealth strategic operation and ensure that the information we're disseminating over the next decade, over the next 2 decades, helps people define how to build wealth, how to build a strategy, which majors to choose, which industries to go into, how to buy property and work together. Like,
and don't get distracted.
And don't get distracted because I don't care about whether or not we're like 2050, whether you had a pledge or not, I don't care, because guess what? My entire community had the resources they need in the school systems that they were in because we were so strategic with our planning. We didn't have to stand on stages and yell and scream and protest, right? And that made, you know, again, I'm sure most organizers and folks who are policy advocates would disagree with me, but that's not the conversation I want to have because it's been unproductive for so long. I'd rather us be in the room saying, okay, now that we've accumulated these wealth on a per household basis, we've made great decisions. We've been able to stabilize our families. We've been able to tap into therapy and have healthy relationships and reduced our divorce rates or reduced our single parent households into 2-parent households. Like, those are the actual things that help to guarantee stronger outcomes. And so if we focus on those right areas, I feel like the conversation will shift in its entirety. And on top of that, by 2050, we'll have seen more Black-led companies either IPO'd or been sold for $500 million to a couple $2 billion. And then when we're talking about creating and working in our own institutions and our own companies, well, it's not going to be a flex to work for a Google, right? Or an Amazon. It's going to be a flex to work for like a Resilia or a Calendly, right? Yes. Or a Capway. Come on now. For me, I'm like, we talk about 3008, like there are Black people in the future. So let's 3008. let's reshift the conversation, right?
I completely agree, because if you can focus on the parts that you control, right? The decisions, the individual decisions and forks in the roads that we make. If you can look at historically where our money has been lost, where there was a wealth transfer, where we've put too many eggs in one basket, you can really start to mitigate against it. And then what you have is a strong base that can move policy forward at a much stronger rate. It's not to say that grassroots organizing and protesting doesn't work or isn't effective. It's just like, imagine how much more effective it could be if it were well funded by people who also benefit from those activities. So yeah, I'm right there with you. That's the perfect answer and the perfect way to end. I just want to like drop the mic and like cut. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Cashing Out the Podcast. To see more videos like this, subscribe to our YouTube channel and be sure to turn on your notifications. To get your copy of Cashing Out the book, visit Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, your local bookstore, or download the audiobook on Audible.